because I understand where I want this thing to go. And a lot of people, I feel, are always on some happy to be here bullshit.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're happy to be here, but at the same time, you're acting like you deserve to be here. And most of the time, none of these people deserve to be where.
From CNR JUTA DE BEER, imini umsindisi wesizwe, umvelisi Nqango umelisi wesizwe, formerly known as Lwazi Madonsela, bringing you a show about creative entrepreneurs live from the landmark that not only birth SA street culture, but also formalize the street hustle. On today's episode, we have Masonwabe Ntloko.
I think for me, what I've always wanted to do was to contribute to culture, not just to say, okay, this is what I see and this is what I'm going to do, which is what a lot of people do creatively, where it's like, oh, okay, you're inspired by this, but when does it move beyond inspiration? Because you're just doing your own rendition of what you're inspired by. So at some point, you need to look at it and go, okay, but from my lens or from my perspective, how does this thing look like? So my thing has always been to contribute to culture, not just take away. So I'm inspired by things, I'm inspired by my childhood, I'm inspired by all these things, but it really matters to me to have my own perspective of this thing. So it's like how you're looking at the world through my lens. So it's not luckily we grew up in the same environment. You know, someone who grew up in Pretoria, in a township in Pretoria, is the same as someone who grew up in a township in the Eastern Cape in terms of like things that we do. So that's where the relatability factor comes in. But it's always things that I always want something beyond just, it's like when you're drawing a picture, anyone can draw a picture, but when do you make it yours, you know? And that's a problem that South Africa is suffering from right now, where you have a lot of these creative people, but they're they're inspired or they're sampling. But the thing is that the person they're sampling from hasn't cleared the sample. So now it gets tricky. So that's why we have little baby so and 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 so. Also, I am not trying to be controversial. God bless everybody.
Yo, so you do great work. You translate culture. You add to culture. As someone who adds to it, when you get to conversations with brands, because in South Africa, we haven't created enough of a buying market for our own products as creatives. Because there's like a handful of people who actually sell direct to consumer and their business is viable without their business being bought into. For you, when you're talking to brands, what are the three things that you cannot not, that are always stipulated in like your contracts as someone who's done over 10 of these collabs, partnerships?
First conversation is, please know that I'm not afraid to walk away. Understand that. I'm not afraid. Whatever money you put on the table, please understand that I'm not afraid to walk away from it. Two, if we're going to create something, understand that there's other people you could go to. There's a reason why we're having this conversation, which means we have to do this thing. I'm not going to say my way, but my opinion needs to matter. So my perspective needs to, because at the end of the day, let's be realistic. I have gotten to a point where I have an audience that buys my stuff. Not when I drop something, people clap, and then tomorrow people forget about it. I have people who still wear things that I did when I did even the Yogi Sit thing. There's people who still have the bottles till today, you know, which means the work that I do means something to people. So if you come to me, understand that, and it's not even an arrogant standpoint. It's just let's talk to each other as equals. I understand that you're a bigger brand, but there's a reason you came to me. So it's important for us to have a conversation where I'm respected as much as I respect you. So you're not doing me a favor. The times of you doing me a favor are long gone now. Because whatever you want us to do, I can just drop it by myself and it will move. So if we're going to do this, let us leave this relationship thinking very highly of each other, basically. So for me, that's, I don't know if we're on point number 2 or point number 3. And then another point is every time I do something, I always make sure that my people, because I now understand my demographic. It's a growing one. There's people that shock me every day, but I understand my demographic. And because I understand my demographic, it's easy for me to have a conversation with brand by saying, look, this is who my people are. So we need to cater to my people. in how we do things. This is what, for example, if I do a show, for me, I understand the invite-only thing, right? I really do get that. But you also, this is a brand, like what we always seem to forget, I'm going to say as creatives, like musicians, everybody, is that the reason you are where you are today is the people that support you. So you need to afford them the respect that they deserve. Because they could choose anyone else, but they chose you. So if that's what they want to do and that's how they chose you, choose them. So always make it easy for them to either access your product or experience the experiences that you create. So just take care of my people.
Okay. Take care of people, brand partnerships. And then you're an illustrator. I think this is a question I've been asking everyone who illustrates and makes art. It's a very... I've gotten an answer few and far between, right? How do you license your work? Because we create our identities. We create what things are supposed to look like. Like how Kone Juta has its own font, how we shoot it, how we showcase it, right? How do you license your work when you're partnering with brands?
I think for me...
In a law.
So for me, this is the thing, right? When I came to Joburg, from what I saw, I was under the impression that people did certain things, firstly. It's like, if you see this person use that font, you're thinking that's their font. You see this person do this, you're thinking, you know. My thing is, even outside of trademarking your print, doing all of these things, the most important conversation is, obviously 100% of nothing is nothing. But me going into every conversation that I go into, one of the most important points that we always need to underline or add in whatever contract that we do is that I own 100% of my work. Firstly. So that means if any weird thing happens in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, the contract states that we asked this guy to do this with us. It was a partnership. It wasn't a commission. Even with commissions, there's supposed to be a buyout fee, but because a lot of us as young creatives, we don't understand that there's still a level of you owning the work. There's still a level of, you know. So for example, with me, everything that I do has the same print. With trademarking your print, you can't trademark the whole thing. You can only trademark a section. So with mine, it's the 2 circles, then this, then, you know. Then whatever I have that has that, I can always say, yo, but I own this. You can't, I don't think you can thingy an illustration unless it's per illustration per collab. Because remember, with me, most of the times when I do a collab, I like calling it the face of the collab. So I always do a face. It's like even when I did the Markham stuff, there was a face which ended up being a repeat pattern, and then it was what was on the T-shirt. So it's like even with the Rocking the Daisies one, it's
the hair comb.
Yeah, it's the combs, you know. So it's like, because also you need to be mindful of the fact that you want to create things that, if ever this relationship continues, you have a language that speaks to just that. You know, so like, for example, if my conversation with Daisies continues, we have the combs, we have, you know, so now we'll build from that. So there's a level of you understanding that, oh, okay, if this guy drops an illustration, just one illustration of a comb, Daisies is coming. You know, if you have a shoe thing, if this guy drops that shoe, whatever's coming. So for me, it's important to have that, to go, okay, what separates all these things? Because I feel like a lot of the times when things are not treated individually, like people don't treat things uniquely. It's like, this is your style. Okay, cool. We're just going to slap it on that. Or just slap it on that. Slap it on that. Yes, you are sort of kind of prisoned to work within a certain space because that's your style. But there's so much that you can still do. There's so much that you can still, like, explore, you know, for me, I'm very hands-on with everything that I do. So even I'm going to make an example with the Daisies collab. I was the one choosing what material, what color, what cuts. You were there when we went to go get samples. Like all of that, because I understand where I want this thing to go. And a lot of people, I feel, are always on some happy to be here bullshit. Where it's like, you're happy to be here, but at the same time you're acting like you deserve to be here. And most of the time, none of these people deserve to be where. Like, some opportunities happen to you, but it's up to you to if you're gonna stick around, or if you're gonna stay here, it's up to the amount of work or the level of work that you do. And a lot of people are not easy to work with, so it's a tricky,
Yeah,
I feel like I'm answering a lot of questions that you're not asking.
No, you're podcasting. Please lower your arms for the camera.
I forget.
Yeah, the people need to see your face. This guy's a terrorist. When you're working with brands, you're working with global brands at the stage because you rebranded the whole of Horn of Africa. I'm not going to continue your work with Danon, etc., etc. If you hear, you probably know why. If you don't, you should know why.
I'm really good at what I do, man.
Yeah.
Really good.
How do you price when you do really good work? Because
you know
opportunities fall on my lap, right? Those things happen, like you've just discussed. How do I price it? Because I'm like, this is a global brand.
So here's the thing, right? You'll never really get an answer to this question. Like, I've watched the podcast. I've heard you ask this question. You'll never really get a firm answer, only because everyone looks at things differently. So here's my thing, right? I am never a prisoner of my previous mistakes, firstly. So which means every deal that I walk into, I understand what I messed up on the other one. You know, it's like licensing your work. I didn't know that until I looked at something that I did. And when I looked at that, I was looking at the amount of times they were using it. I'm like, I'm sure I should be getting paid for this. But on the contract, it didn't state that. So as time goes on, you learn these things. It's like, for example, like most people who always go, yo, I'm an entrepreneur, And it's like, look, me, I'll tell you the honest truth. I never actually sat there and thought this what I was going to run a business. All I wanted to do was just create cool shit. That was it, you know? Then when you get into it, it's like, okay, question number one, how long do I want to be here? I want to do this shit for the rest of my life. Okay, cool. If I want to do this for the rest of my life, then that simply means I need to start acting accordingly. So, okay, you're going to, it's like, if someone ever asks you, when did you formalize your business? Bro, it's like you're working in the music industry right now. You get there and they say to you, yo, we need you to fill out this vendor form. When you fill out the vendor form, they're like, we need your VET number. It's like, I don't even have a VET number. Then you go register. Then you see, so you learn these things as you go, which is the same with pricing. But what I do now is when I have a conversation, I go, these are the deliverables that you will have. I am not, at this point, I am not like most illustrators, designers, whatever.
You're an artist.
I come in and I'm really good at that painting shit. Hey?
So
like,
you sold that to America.
Boy, man. Hey, you know what? Anyways,
Carry
you start realizing that, okay, I lost my train of thought now.
Yeah, in business, when you formalized.
So when you formalize, that's not where I was. Now I lost my train of thought.
No, you really were saying, yo, when you formalized, you're a vendor, you understand the VAT, and then how
Oh, yeah. So with pricing, I was saying how I price now is I look at, luckily for me, I can afford to be somewhat arrogant sometimes because I can go, oh, no, I can just do this myself. You know, if I just raise whatever amount of money I need. So like, for example, but this is another thing, but we have to have a conversation about production. We don't understand, as young black people, we don't understand the amount of money that goes into production. My bad. I was too loud. Sorry. But so now what I do is I go, okay, if we're going to create a product, the conversation I have now is, so for example, one of the clothing collabs that I did in the past, the conversation was, this is the amount of money we're going to give you. It was little money, you know, but I understood what that thing was going to do for me in the future,
scope,
you know,
things,
like, so sometimes there's certain deals that you take because you understand what it's going to do for you, you know, as long as, like I said, you own your work, you know. So for me, when I looked at that, I was like, okay, where am I trying to take this thing? Am I trying to every single time live check to check? So for example, I don't have the most collabs this year, if you think about it. I don't have the most product drops this year. I might have, you know, I don't want to say I'm mad at me. I don't have money, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm comfortable with probably what? I probably did 2-3 collabs this year, only.
3.
Exactly. And there's people who do collabs
And
back
you
to
stop
back to
working
back
in
to
the
back
music
to back.
industry, yeah.
Is exactly. You see, and I stopped working in the music industry, which is another conversation for another day.
I mean, you can do a part 2. Carry on.
My job in this podcast is to be behind the scenes and just say, yeah, now you see that. Like my job, I like even when you sent me the text, yo, Wednesday we're shooting this. I was like, hey, my dog,
It do happen like that.
like why am I part? Because this is your journey, and it's a journey that I've been blessed enough to watch from literally the beginning, and I'm happy just watching it, man. I understand this is a fire podcast. I keep saying this, that at this point, I don't think anyone's better than you right now. Like they can, you have to understand. After watching this, I was like, you know
say
what?
this with your hands down. It's a soundbite.
What?
Say it again.
That at this point, there's no one better than you when it
Tell
comes
them.
to this podcasting shit. That's the truth. Because think about, like, here's the thing, right? I wasn't into a lot of this podcasting thing before this show specifically. And then I was like, yo, let me actually get into it. And before I make a bold statement like that, say, yo, Lwazi's JUTA DE BEER is the best podcast. Let me actually go watch other things. I don't know, man. You know, like, I understand there's bigger, platforms, McG and whatnot, but for what you are doing, I've seen people try do it. But I think you're the only person who's doing it. Where it's like, there's takeaways. A lot of these times, like, yeah, no, hey, dog, hey, remember, hey, it's like, yo, what am I taking away from this thing,
That you remember.
Exactly. What's that? Adele song? Do you remember? You see, but anyways, what were we talking about?
So pricing.
Pricing. So where I am right now is I always go, okay, these are my deliverables. So usually how I do things is I will come in going, I own my font, I own my print, I own my illustrations. Now we've moved into sound also. So I have my own audio that we are going to use for literally every campaign. So with a font, usually either you buy a font or whatever. So this is my font now. So we need to have a conversation of how this is going to go. We need to have a conversation because you are going to get a Prince KB song. Let's get a Masonwabe Ntloko song and do the exact same sync deal. You see? So that's where I'm going with it now to go, okay, how much more can I get from this? Before me telling you all of this, how much more can I get from this? So when I come and present to you, I go, so that's why I've been declining a lot of these collabs, It's like when we have a conversation, I'm like, look, I understand where you're coming from, but this is where I want to come from. So if we can't find middle ground, it's okay. We can part ways. There's going to be another project, probably that. But also, I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to move away from brand collabs, because there's going to get a point where they're going to go, hey, Masonwabe is overexposed now. These are the agency people. Hey, we used Masonwabe for this and that 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 and that, right? And remember, for some of us, we don't have street smart managers or book smart managers. We are running this thing ourselves. I am figuring this thing out as I go. It looks like I know what I'm doing. 100% of the times I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. But I'm here and I'm trying to make it work. I learn from my mistakes. I make sure that I am a pleasant experience. Like, so when someone works with me, they go, yo, working with, even if I hated working with you, like there's so many people that I've hated working with, but they wouldn't say the same with me. Because one, I'm reliable. Two, I overextend myself because I understand that this in the bigger picture looks good for me. So it's not enough me just submitting a PSD or submitting an AI file and keeping it moving. It's okay, here's my AI file. This is the look that I have. So for an example, so my pricing is a bit tricky because remember, that I'm gonna say I have AV who I trust with my visuals, who's now gotten to a point where he understands the Masonwabe Ntloko brand.
Yeah.
Right? So when we're shooting, he probably even has a Masonwabe Ntloko preset now, where he just shoots and goes, this is what we're doing. Because there's a certain look that I'm going for, right? And in the same breath, video. In the same breath, I'm going to have a Lwazi who I know understands when I say something. I'm not a video guy. So I don't understand these things. I'm just going to go, this is what I'm trying to do. and Lwazi is gonna go, okay, this is how I think you should do it. Yeah. So I have all these people, and all these people at some point need to start getting paid. So my pricing is mine, but I also come with a team to go, this guy does this guy does this guy does this, you know? And I'm hoping that the team grows and all these people have their own companies where I just want to get to a point where if I'm doing whatever campaign, everyone just understands that he's gonna come with these guys. In this, Shooter's the guy who does my sound, like the jingle. So Shooter needs to get paid when we're doing sync deals. Yeah. You see? So those millions need to go to him.
Oh, so you're getting millions?
No, I didn't say that. I said I'm talking about, it's a future conversation. It's a current and future conversation.
I know I'm not the only person who was like, oh, he's getting millions.
No. Come on now. You know?
I'm not saying we're pocket watching, but...
I'm still wearing shorts, you know? I'm still psyched. I don't have a car. Why would you think I have money? Think about it. I don't have money.
Yo, this is crazy.
This is why I didn't want to do this podcast, man.
How do you build a community? Because I've seen a lot of show invites. People like, yo, I was also anxious, not a laddie, when I did my screening. I was like, yo, you're actually putting it out to the universe, like, yo, universe, come, let's gather. How do you build your community to the point that you have over 400 people in a venue that only has the capacity for 80?
Do you want me to tell you the truth?
Yeah.
I have no idea, but this is what I'm going to tell you. This is what I think it is. Because that's actually a conversation you need to have. I'm coming here speaking like I know what I'm talking about. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I am figuring this thing out as I go. So my answer today might not be the exact... It's like when people say, yo, please mentor me. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. But anyways, so here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I think it is. I think firstly, it's the human experience.
Yeah.
It's meeting someone and having a genuine everyday conversation with a person to a point where they feel like they know the person and they want the person to win. Two, it's a level of respect that you give people. So, bear in mind, I haven't talked about how good my work is. It's just the level of respect you give people. Because if I come to you, so one of the greatest advantages that I have is that I grew up in a very small town. In the town that I grew up on, my mom's a teacher, right?
Yeah.
But my neighbor, one of my neighbors works at Spa, right? One of my neighbors cleans. One of my childhood friends' dads is a security, but not even a formalized security. He literally wears his big coat. And then he carries Induguyak and he's inside. You see? But we were raised to look at everyone as a human being. So when you speak to someone, you're speaking to someone not at their level, but you're looking at them as an equal. So those little experiences make people sometimes, like I've had so many people that I've met literally just in the street. Just, hey, how you doing? You have a conversation. Boom, this person's a client. They didn't know who I was, what I did. You know, I'm not coming and having a conversation with someone who already knows me. These are people who did not know me from above. So, but now, because of just that, it's like, hey, what do you do? Then, you know, and then because of that experience, because people will never forget how you make them feel. Because of that experience, that person vouches for you so much that they're like, yo, no, I know that dude. I know that dude. So even when you see them at a show, you go to them, you're the one. Like, I don't have the I'm a big deal mindset. I'm not a big deal. But I don't have that. You know, I don't have the I sit there and I think I'm better than you. It's like, yo, I don't have a rule of, nah, this person has to come to me. I get up and go to that person and go, hey, how are you doing? If I've met you, you know, if I haven't met you, I hope you're not afraid to come to me. But if we end up speaking, you will start realizing that, yo, man, this is just an everyday human being, you know, who enjoys whatever they enjoy and lives a very simple life. So I think that's the most important thing. Then the other thing is, I think the problem with people is that there's no new idea, firstly. But there's a new way of introducing an idea. So having a specific way in which you speak, you know, it's like My things might look. I'm terrible at my spelling. Everyone knows this, People say I'm dyslexic. I don't think I am, because no doctor has told me that. But the intention behind every single thing I write is always, when I speak, my language is always a language that even a 5-year-old child can understand. I'm not looking for the biggest words. I'm not looking for the most. I'm just telling you, if this is a bottle of water, I'm telling you this is a bottle of water. I'm not going to tell you the science behind it if the only answer you require is just this is a bottle of water. I'm not going to tell you about precipitation and da-da-da and da-da-da da-da-da. So I think a lot of these things get lost in translation because people are trying to be too deep.
And then with you having a human experience with everyone, how are you feeling about the art industry? Because we're not seeing you sign to any gallery. We're not seeing you being invited to group shows.
Wow. Look, man. You know what happened this weekend. Let me start there. It made me realize something. Let me go back to how I was raised. So the confidence that I have, the level of confidence that I have, comes from being raised in a very safe home. So when I say safe home, I mean my mom was the type of parent who always understand that people might not always choose you. And they might not choose you not because you're not good at what you do, but because you're not what they're looking for. So even this is skill set wise. So it's like, I don't know how they choose Miss South Africa and all of these things, but you might find out that they already have an idea of who they're gonna pick. So that means whatever you do, if you do not fit that criteria, you're not gonna win. Now, does that mean you're not good enough? And this is what happens with most competitions. It's like, oh, okay, this is the archetype of the person we need to have now. They need to be black. They need to do this. So it means if you're white, you're not going to win. Does that mean you're not good at what you do? No, right? So what I've grown to understand is that there's nothing wrong with me and my art, right? Firstly. So just because
it does sell.
I'm getting there. So there's nothing wrong with me and my art. Just because I don't have an entire community, which I have no beef with. Let's be very clear with that. I have no problem with everybody. Everyone who can say they do anything within the art industry. This is not the design industry, the art industry. I will show you an email that I sent. And either I won't say people chose to ignore, I don't know, But I've had conversations with a few people. Some people were warming up and then they just end up being cold. And to tell you the truth, I really don't care at this point. So my thing right now is, with or without you, this thing is going to happen. You see this thing happening. I pack up a room for a rag exhibition. So for an art exhibition, I could probably do the same, right? So what I realized is, I don't know what you're doing.
I'm saying it's cool. Yeah.
So for an art exhibition, I could probably do the same. Now, what I realized is that if these people don't come to the party, it's okay. I will build this thing by myself. It will take a lot longer, than it would if I would partner up with someone and they already have the network that I'm trying to,
infiltrate.
It means now I have to create coincidences. So coincidentally, you found my work. No, I intended for you to find my work. So that's where I'm at right now. Where it's like I said, I have no problem with anyone. If anyone wants to work with me, come, let's work. But if you don't want to, that's okay too. But please understand that this is not going to stop because you don't want to be part of it. And it's going to hurt you when it works.
Talk that talk.
So like I said, really have no problem with anyone in the art industry. I would love to work with people, right? But remember, and you always say we speak to the kids. This is for you, kids. Just because you didn't come up in the most conventional way, understand that there's going to be people, institutions, and all these things that will not gravitate towards you just because of that. But like I said, this does not mean you're not good enough. This is a unique story now. So it means even when I have a conversation with whoever, I'm having a conversation from a point of understanding how this thing works now. I'm not just talent at this point. I'm also there when we speak on business. To go, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do
You
this?
think
How are we
you've
gonna
big broed yourself out of the game. I had the same conversation with Lwazi. It's like, at some point, your structures are too good for me to plug into.
I don't think so, ne? But my intention, like I said now, is doing brand collabs is beautiful, but the problem with these things is that there will always be someone harder than you. You know, it's like if you look at like even with hip hop, there was a point where DMX was the hardest, and then after DMX, I think it was like right after DMX, I think it was a bit of Ja Rule, and then after Ja Rule, it was Eminem, and then after Eminem, it 50. Was 50. Then after 50, I think it was T.I. Then after T.I., it was Wayne. Then after Wayne, I think Future had a little bit of a run where it was the guy on top. Then after that, it was Drake, right? But also, Drake's run is not as long as people say it is. But this is a conversation for another day. You know, people always say, Drake has been on top for 10 years. I'm like, when did that 10 years start? But anyways, then, you know, there's always going to be the next guy. But with all of this, remember that there was never a point where Jay-Z was on top. Jay-Z has never been the highest selling artist. He's been top 2, top 3, but he's always been in the conversation. From even when you look at like Reasonable Doubt, when Reasonable Doubt dropped.
No, that album with Hard Knock Life.
That is the year, I think that's 98. So no one's touching DMX in 98. DMX releases 2 platinum selling albums.
99. Okay, the rollout is 99.
So yes, so it's 98. I think both in 98, but he runs from, you know, but at the end of the day,
Jay-Z's
he was the most consistent, right? He's the best rapper alive. I always will say this, the greatest rapper to ever rap, but there was never a point where he was the top guy. He was amongst the top people. Remember, there was a point where he retired and then he came back. When as he came back, Wayne was coming up. So all you have to do is be consistent and understand that you won't always be the most likable guy or the most, but if you are consistent and you know your stuff and you deliver at the highest quality, you'll be fine. And you've built your own audience. So yeah, man, long story short, I really have no beef with anybody, you know? God bless everyone.
How do you pace yourself? Because recently you dropped the rugs, which is, I think you've become the rug guy. As much as you do great shit, everyone's like, that's the one thing people want from you.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing they feel they can all access. And it's a part of your creation that will live in households for years to come.
And that was the idea. The idea wasn't to be the rug guy. The idea was, so what I looked at was, it ties into the whole art industry conversation. When I tried everything, I started realizing that, okay, maybe my purpose in this world is not to create something that stays on people's walls. But at the end of the day, I do understand that I have a story to tell. So let me find different ways to tell the stories. So one of the stories, the first idea I had, I literally just woke up and was like, I think I'd make a fire rug. Then that's how the rug thing came about. But the pacing, you don't really do it yourself, eh? The world just does it. Like, here's my thing, right? I'm a firm believer in you're always exactly where you need to be and doing exactly what you need to do, right? So every opportunity that hasn't worked out, I've never taken a lot of things to heart. So even when if that thing bombs out, you've seen me. Like, there's been times where I've submitted invoices for things and then things just don't work out. And I'm like, all right, cool, you know? So, because I understand one thing, and now I have to say this on a public platform, but it looks bad on God for me not to succeed. Because think about it. I have no problem with anyone, right? 2, I try to make sure that everyone is fine. So if I can advise you on something, I try my level best to do that. So if this works out long run, I have a bigger space to literally help people. Because I try. I don't think I'm Jesus Christ in helping people, but I really do try to make sure that people are fine. I really do try and make sure that, you know, like, I try.
You are aware that's a soundbite, right?
it is what it is, man. You know, but so sometimes I'm just there like, you know what? I know my nigga God. He will never let me fail. So you've heard me when I'm like, there were times where I was broke and I'm like, you know what? It's fine. There will always be money coming. When I need that money, it will come.
Broke is a perspective.
I guess.
It's a spectrum. But more than anything, before it looks bad on God, you create at a constant pace. You're always upskilling. Mm-hmm. Why? Like, what's the thing that says, yo, I need to do it? Because realistically speaking, as a man, you live like a very simple life. You cycle, do the things you like, comics, movies, simple. You probably could survive off one check for the next 2 years.
Probably.
But you've made like 3 this year. Then what keeps you going? Because you've proven that you sell out.
So I think what you need to not be afraid of is growth. So even when, I don't want to say even when growth is uncomfortable, but even when, because sometimes there's times where something happens and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm the guy right now. But for me, this is how everything comes about. I will come into a space, look at something, and I go, yo, I did this. And I'm like, if I did this, what more can I do? So it's like, oh, okay, I've seen that this is possible. So it's like even the rag conversation, it became a hard conversation to have in terms of like remaking them, because I'm like, I've done it already. So now I had to start also thinking as a business person. So not just as a creative where it's like, okay, I've proven that I can do rags and we sold out. All right, cool. I just want to leave the game knowing that I dropped rags, they sold out in under an hour. You know? That's cool.
Under
but
15 minutes.
And this website crashed, you know? So, but imagine if that's my story, that's a beautiful story. But I'm a one-hit wonder now.
More than anything, I think the main question is what we always ask our guests. Do you think we still need a landmark like JUTA De Beer? As someone who's not from here.
That's what I was going to say, that even when we had this conversation, remember when you said this is what the podcast name is, I was like, it's kind of tricky. You can't have me on the show because...
But you've been inspired by the place.
Not really. No, let me explain why I say that. Remember, I come from Etutu, which is a very small town where nothing really happens, you know? My point of reference when it comes to art was just me. So when I say that is, I had an older brother who could draw, but at some point I started taking this thing seriously. I did not even know a Picasso at some point in my life. There was a guy, Utam Tidwan, he used to call me Picasso. I just thought it was a random nickname, right? Every time you'd see me, hey, Picasso, no, I'm Gren. I go to varsity my first year. When I get to varsity, they're talking about Picasso. I'm like, oh.
They're talking about me.
It's like, yo, this is the guy. The guy draws, which is why they call him. So I have no art background, which means even in terms of like pop culture, South African pop culture, to add more, I don't really, like, I'm a hip hop kid through and through. That's what I grew up on, right? So, and most of what I used to listen to from a very young age was your Jay-Z's, your Lil Wayne's, your Rick Ross's. Like, this is me in primary, right? So at this time, I have no idea of this place existing to a point where I even get to varsity without knowing at this point this part is this landmark. Even a place called Braamfontein exists.
Yeah.
This is me first, second, third year. I only find out about Braamfontein when I moved to Joburg because I'm doing an internship. That's the only time I find out about it. Now at that point, I've already formed my own, I don't know if ideologies is the right word, but of who I am and what I want to do. And, you know, now I was around Braam here and there, you know, but which is why I'm not discrediting how important and the influence of this place is. I'm just saying that for me, it wasn't as strong as it was for everybody else, because for a very long time, I didn't even know it existed. Now, I will credit this place for my first ever somewhat exhibition, right? When I did stuff with Shane for the Yellow Tour, right? So I will credit it for it making me feel like it's possible for certain things to happen, right?
We need a part 2. Say it in the comments. We want to get into the Shane story, the music story.
The music story.
Say
No
it in
one
the
needs to
comments.
hear that, man. You know,
That's how you survive Joburg. That's how you made your money in Joburg.
True, but nah, I don't. The thing is, it's a beautiful story, but there's so much that also just happened with all of that it's just like, yo, man, life is good now. So I don't. You know, it's like if you're being weird, be weird there.
Yo, what's your word to the youth?
My word to the youth is don't do drugs, kids. Firstly, secondly,
Sorry for my Apple Watch.
no.
What's your word to the youth?
Don't do drugs. That's number one. Number two, let me think. Which is, I think, what we spoke about mostly here is that none of these people have the power to actually stop you. I think that's very important for people to understand that. If doors are closed, open your own. You know, like, I think we underestimate sometimes the power that we have. You know, I've had times where people were actively trying to do things to me, like where people were threatening to sue me and do this and do this and do that and do that and do that. I made it out. So I think after that, I was like, yo, you see, anyone can say whatever. I will always make it back up because no one is God.
You know what's funny? We were having a conversation earlier, and the conclusion was that, yo, this certain person has blocked me out of a certain room.
Yeah.
And then as I was saying that, it dawned upon me that I'm the fucking building.
Exactly. This is we were having this conversation last week.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think if you start realizing that, it's like, yo, look, man.
Because you see what's happening.
Yeah, no one can take what you have away from you. Like, they can try, and a lot of the things that happen will affect you. That's true. I've seen this with myself. There's been times where I was sitting and I'm like, you know what? I think it's just time for me to pack my bags. You know, when you're sitting there and you're thinking about, this is how much I have this month, and I've paid my rent. Let me just finish this month, pack my bags, and go home because of everything that seems to be happening around you. That's how life can be. But literally probably like 5 days later, I was like, you tried me. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you will actually do that will stop me. Because like I said, human experience. Everyone I've worked with thinks I'm a wonderful experience to work with. So if one person wants to destroy me because ni kribe Joburg, I will make it out.
Crowned by the people, ladies and gentlemen.
And that's me.
Say if you need a part 2. And don't forget to like and subscribe on Apple. Drop a review, man. If you enjoyed it, if you think it was bums, whatever you feel, just drop a review. We appreciate that. Masonwabe Ntloko, crowned by the people.